New versus old, which will win? As many of you guys know, for many years there's the megapixels war. Which manufacturer can give us the most megapixels? But there's quality versus quantity. You don't always have to have the most megapixels to make a good picture. So, what about across generations of equipment? Take for example, the recent Samsung Galaxy S8 that I have just purchased. This features a 12 megapixel camera, and this represents the latest technology in 2017. Well, why don't we pair that up with a Nikon D50 with an 18 to 200 millimeter lens. Now the 18 to 200 is actually the first generation 18 to 200 from Nikon, and I bought the lens in 2007, but the camera body, the D50, was from 2006. So 10 plus years old equipment versus the latest tech, different generations, different type of equipment. Who will win? Let's find out. To start out, let's pick out our subject. Here's the motherboard box that I had for my server. It's a mini RTX build, if you're wondering. Now repurposed for a hot glue gun box. But behind this box, we'll have some details that we can try to get. And this will be the baseline in a non-scientific test to measure the performance between the Nikon D50 and the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus cameras. Okay, so we're at the studio right now. We got one of the lamps that's used to light up the screen. We'll use this to mark the spot where we should put the camera so that we can take pictures from a consistent location. We'll also put this box up against this wall behind me and then take some test shots. Now, I have a feeling that the cameras won't be pushed to the limit because we have plenty of light to work with, so this will probably be the easier of the two tests. Just right here. Put this right against the wall. Okay, first up we have the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. Okay, focus first, then take a picture. Okay, next up we have the Nikon D50. Alright, we got this in aperture priority mode. So now that it's nighttime, let's try taking a picture of this motherboard box in this dark hallway. So I got the box over here on the ledge. And we'll take a picture from right over here, right by this wall. Alright, so I'll try my best to get a steady shot. I'm just resting this camera above the tripod. Get as steady as possible and then taking a picture. Alright, so just to show you what I did, I focused it to the subject and increased the exposure compensation just because the automatic settings were a little bit too dark. Okay, we moved the tripod back just a little bit for the Nikon because the lens sticks out a little bit more. The exposure is set to 1/3 of a second, f3.5, and when I hit the ISO button, it's set at ISO 1600, which is, believe it or not, the fastest ISO that's on the camera. That's the highest amount that you can set. So as part of the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus, you can change the mode to Pro mode, which is over here. You get different settings, but you don't get any aperture control. Alright, let's start comparing photos. So we'll open the daylight pictures first. The Nikon D50 picture will be on the left, and the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus will be on the right. So zooming in on the D50's picture, you can actually see that it's a little bit underexposed, but let's move exposure out of the picture because we set this in semi-auto mode. And with the photos, let's talk about sharpness. The focus was dead on spot for both of them, but you see as I'm zooming in, you're hitting the 6 megapixel limit on the left, and in reality, as I'm zooming into these pictures, you're looking at this like super up close, whereas if you print on the 4x6, you're not going to be that close. But here you see the edges are a little bit sharper, actually no bit sharper, and then if I zoom in even more, you get all the details. So let's start to read some words, right? So you got for designers and enthusiasts, let's look over here. Actually this thing's not letting me zoom in more, but you can see that I can, even if I zoom out to to the same proportions, that it's easier to read the one from the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So the S8 Plus wins here. Let's move on to the night photos. So the first set of night photos are in a semi-slow shutter. Again, the D50 is going to be on the left, and the S8 Plus will be on the right. So let's zoom in on this picture. And here's where it gets a little bit interesting. It does look like at first, in terms of the larger text here, that the S8 Plus is a little bit sharper, but as I'm zooming in, I think where it says designers and enthusiasts, it might be arguably, even though there's a little bit more color in the noise, it seems like, to me at least, it's a little easier to read on the Nikon D50. So depending on the detail and what you're looking at, it might be better on one or the other. So I think for this one, and I know this one has like a little white balance issue, it's a little bit reddish in color, but you know, again, those can be fine-tuned in the camera settings. But I think in this case it actually might be tied. Okay, so we did one more test, and the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus has a quote-unquote Pro mode. It allows you to fine-tune some settings, so let me close these out. This is the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus with the Pro mode, and let me open up the Nikon with the longer exposure. So here we're going to try to fine-tune the exposure a little bit more, and again, D50 on the left, Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus on the right. Let's zoom in on these photos. So this is a 2-second exposure for a Nikon. Nikon topped out at ISO 1600, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus allows you to take pictures above 1600. But in Pro mode, I actually found out that it locked me down to ISO 800, I believe. I'm not sure why that is. But anyway, looking at the pictures, and I don't recall the settings exactly besides that 2-second shutter. So I'm going to actually bring up the properties really quick and look at the EXIF data. And so that's Nikon. And then here's the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So another difference, and I actually forgot to mention, that the f-stops are different. So the aperture, the maximum aperture, the light collecting ability of the lens is different between the two. So Nikon tops out at f3.5, and then remember, the lower the f-stop number, the more light it lets in. The Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus is an f1.7 lens, so that has a more light collecting ability than the Nikon, ironically, even though the lens is physically smaller. And there's actually a ratio, but we won't get into that. So this is actually a 1/4 of a second exposure because it's letting in more light, and it's running at ISO 800. I found that at least the type of files that the D50 outputs doesn't show the ISO number here, but if you bring it into some specialized software, you can actually read it off their version of the EXIF data. But here you got f3.5, so less light collecting ability than the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So since you have that less light gathering ability, you have a little bit longer exposure time, in this case 2 seconds. So let's cancel out of these. But one thing that's interesting is that if I zoom in here, clearly the Nikon, you can read, even though it's a little bit fuzzy, the words here better than the Samsung. So in this case, the Samsung actually loses because here a lot of the detail gets smudged out, versus on the Nikon it retains a lot more. Then again, you know, we're comparing two way different things. You know, one's a dedicated still photo camera, another one is a all-in-one thing, phone, camera, etc. So that's very interesting because among the different pictures that we compared, we have the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus win with the daylight photo. In that first night photo, it was a tie, and in this photo, the Nikon D50 outperformed the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So all in all, it's actually a tie if you kind of combine those set of images, which is really interesting because the Nikon setup being 10 plus years old, and the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus being the bleeding edge of technology in terms of the Samsung phones. And so I hope you guys like this comparison. I'm looking forward to do more videos, and we'll see you next time.